Welcome back to the Elevate Your Best podcast. My name is Michael Dankloff. Today, we're actually having a conversation with a person who's another Lifebook leader in the community of those people who are looking to bring Lifebook out to the world so we can all live much more intentionally and fulfilled life. So this year, we're going to be spotlighting a few people who've gone through the Lifebook process. Lifebook, as we talked a little bit earlier in the podcast series here, is a program to help you refine and revise and discover your life vision for your life, to set a map, get a map and directions for where you want to go in your life. And I really wanted to bring people here to the podcast who are doing that, who are executing on it. And today we've got a special person to talk to about how she's had this help recreate her life to discover a new way of being. So I'd like to introduce you to Jen Andreani. She's been in an accountability group with me for almost a year now at this point, as we've been learning to lead people through this construct. We wanted to really spotlight and highlight the work that she's doing because I think that she's doing some amazing stuff. Jen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Michael, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and it's always wonderful to share ideas. So I'm excited to get started.
Awesome. So I guess the first question I have for you is, when did this Lifebook journey start for you, and what made you decide to start on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the journey kind of began in 2020. Before, and 2020 is obviously a really big year for pretty much everyone in the world. Before 2020, I had been working in the community in different aspects. I'm a permaculture designer, and we basically study and apply the principles of ecology and how nature works to human systems. And so I had all these really cool projects going out in the community. I was doing community organizing, doing community compost work, and work with sustainable agriculture in my city and the surrounding area. And I had all these great systems and networks of people and support around me. And then the pandemic hit in March, and just things started to lock down. Those social networks and connections stopped happening in person, and months went by. And I had done all this work to set up all these resilient systems outside of, my home and the community, in my garden. And what I hadn't been doing is working on the inner resilient systems. So when everything else stopped and those networks were cut, I realized a lot of my needs that I had set up were no longer met. And I didn't have a plan in place already to meet those needs. So I was stuck. And then on top of that, you had the emotional impact of the isolation. And really, I found myself in a place where I was depressed, I was anxious, I had no energy, I was experiencing all these physical symptoms. And then I found Lifebook, and I was like, okay, I need a permaculture design for my life. I have a design for my garden where all the elements are integrated, it's well thought out, everything's working well together. I don't have to do too much because the system is designed intelligently, but what about my life? What about my health and fitness, which is clearly not doing great? What about my emotional life, how I think? My relationships have shifted. So that's how I found Lifebook, and I started working through the process, and I got some pretty amazing results.
Very nice. I like how you take a framework from outside and then apply it on the inside. It's awesome that you had that foundation already, and then it's what I use here, I can certainly use elsewhere in my life. That's awesome. So that kind of triggered you to get into it. What came up for you as you're going through it?
The process itself, because of the state I was in, it was really hard for me. I had a lot of brain fog and really low energy. So to be honest, going through the Lifebook process by myself, and especially isolated, was pretty difficult. So it took me quite a while to actually do the introspection and the writing. That part was difficult, but once I started to get momentum, I was pretty close to the end. Okay, then I figured out, okay, I have something that I can work with now.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know whenever I went through it as well, it was with a quest on Mind Valley, but I also didn't finish it in the time slot that they gave us. And it took a little while to get into that introspection layer. So well, of that, where did you slow down? What was the hardest category for you to get through?
And this is actually common from the people that I've worked with in Lifebook, but this spiritual life, it's not as concrete as the other ones. In fact, it kind of seems like it's the opposite. So it's really easy to visualize maybe your health and fitness. You can see yourself running a marathon, but is there a spiritual marathon? What is the equivalent? And so it took me a while to really even figure out, what does it mean? What do I write here? What is in my spiritual life? Because it is so abstract. But it actually turned out, with some attention, with some intention, my spiritual life category is one of my highest categories. Like, it just happened to turn out that way. But
Hey, so that was one of the hardest. I know for me, I ended up getting stopped right at the career level. I'd gone through finance, and then there's almost a week or two gap before I got to the next one. So, but spiritual is one of those ones that is less tangible, kind of intentionally. So with that, then what was the easiest category for you?
I think health and fitness was, because I had a clear pain point there. I had all these fatigue and just the brain fog, and I hadn't been at the gym. My martial arts group wasn't training anymore because of the pandemic. So there's a lot of lack, so to speak. So, okay, I know what I don't want. This is what I want. That was very clear. And for me, that's a foundational category. Having my health and fitness at a really high level just kind of supports all the other categories. So
Nice. And that's actually really relevant, because it's the category we just talked about in the last podcast, was health and fitness, being that on the rhythm for Lifebook, this is when we talk about that. So I'm glad that you were able to get that, because it is such a foundational piece, is that idea of, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So glad you're able to nail that one. It tends to be the most tangible. You can actually know exactly what you need to do, and it's all written out in various forms and different flavors. So how would you say that your life has changed since you completed that first program?
oh my gosh, it's been a dramatic shift. And people have been telling me how dramatic it was. People that had seen the before and have experienced the after and the ongoing. So I took the Lifebook Assessment before I started the program. I think I was a 62, which is compromised. It's pretty low on the scale. And I wasn't surprised. There just was so much that I was unsure about. I know I want things to be different, but I've been putting so much time and energy into contribution and career, but neglecting these other pieces. But I never stopped to think about, what does it need to look like? And then how do I get there? I took the assessment again in April. Now, my results came sooner, but I didn't take the assessment again until then. I think I got 125, which is extraordinary. So that was like a jump by, a factor of 2, which was pretty amazing. And I was shocked, frankly, how much things could improve. My situation didn't improve, in the sense that we were still locked down, we were still disrupted, but I was able to connect the dots with what I had going in my inner space, my inner life as well. So I felt really fulfilled in all these areas that I hadn't before.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you got more into the appreciation of where you're at, rather than the feeling of lack of where you're going.
Yeah, and it was my opportunity to sit in my room and think. Like, a lot of us had the opportunity to sit indoors for a while there and just reflect, and to occupy my mind as well. So what do I need to do to get to this place? And what do I need to learn? And I'm definitely a lifelong learner. So it reignited this inspiration and this desire and this hunger for growth and knowledge, which is really fulfilling for me.
Got it. Yeah, and it seems to be fairly common in the Lifebook community, is those who are looking to develop to the next stage. And with that comes education and learning of our own path. And I really appreciate the fact that Lifebook as a framework doesn't say you need to learn this. It's more of, what do you want to learn about, and then go do it. How often would you say that you go back and refer to your Lifebook? Do you actually look back into it and review it?
Yes, I have it. I have mine in a Google Doc, and it's actually pinned to my browser. So I use it when I'm planning my weeks. So I often reference it, and now I've actually got my quarterly goals in there. So I reference it definitely more often than I did before I started doing that. Because without the reference, I find it's very easy to allow external factors to veer me off course. So I have to go back and say, what did I say I was going to do this quarter? What did I say my big picture was? So having that front and center. And then it also helps to have an accountability group where we have rhythms in my Lifebook accountability group, where we actually look at the January sacred choices. What are our numbers on that? We look at the quarter, we plan it, we review the quarter. We have all these rhythms that always bring me back to my Lifebook. I find that's essential for execution.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's certainly, it helps to, as a filtering agent of what am I doing here? Is this in alignment with that? So I like the fact that this is something that you're engaging on a regular basis. It's something that I know I do as well. So I appreciate that it is a living document. For me, I don't have it in a Google Doc, it's in Notion instead. But similarly, I've got that rhythm, that cadence with an accountability group. We review our categories each month as we do the drill down and setting those regular habits and check in on how we're doing that. So that's awesome that you are still engaging with it. I've had some of my clients who I've worked with as well who've done the Lifebook program, but they never really go back and look at it. It sits on the shelf. And then they wonder why it's not becoming a reality. But if you're not putting in front of you on a regular basis, that life vision that's pulling you towards it, it's harder to see that realized.
Yeah, just if you were to design a house, or in my case, a garden, yeah, you're gonna do the work, you're gonna do the site map. What does the client want? Do the design, the blueprint. But if you just put it on the shelf, you never give it to the people who are gonna build the building or the garden, how is it gonna get done? Or how's it gonna look anything like what you designed originally? So I tell people, like, get it off your shelf, set a date with yourself at least once a week, once a month, to just review it. Make it a special moment for yourself.
Absolutely. So what was the most surprising thing? What caught you off guard? What actually like came up that you didn't expect while you were doing the Lifebook process?
So character is a really neat category. It was another category I had no idea initially how to approach it, because it did also seem very abstract, these like personality strengths. And then I found a really cool resource via character. You can do a character assessment, and I'm all about assessments. You have to figure out where you are to know how you're going to get to where you want to be. And most people forget they need to take that assessment of where they are. And via character survey it's a free survey you can take. And I identified that one of my lesser strengths was perseverance. And like finishing what you start, I get excited about all the different projects and get thrown off course sometimes. And I said, you know what? I'm going to identify my top strengths, which are love of learning, teamwork, leadership, curiosity. I'm going to figure out how to leverage those to increase my lowest character strength to build it up. And I created a habit. And my habit was to have focused work sessions at least 3 times a day. And I've done almost 600 of them, and in the last 11 months, I'd say. And the results have been incredible. Like, I get so much done. Why? Because I've executed the strategy of let me learn how to persevere. What does it mean to persevere? And then do that thing, track it, measure my results, make sure it's working. And I had no idea you could do something like that with your character. So I'm excited to pick the next thing to work on this year for character.
Very nice. So what was that assessment that you mentioned? We'll actually probably link that in the show notes here.
It's via Institute, VIA. So if you go to viacharacter.org, it's their character survey, I believe it's called. I tell everybody about it.
Nice. Sounds like something that I actually probably want to take a look at too, is what comes up. I know I've done the Clifton Strengths and I've done a couple of the other assessments that are out there, but certainly something worth looking into. So you mentioned at the beginning around permaculture and applying those tools here. What does that lead you to? Is that around sustainability? Is it regenerative living? Is it around being good to the earth? Tell us more about that.
So my interest in permaculture and regenerative living, I think I just was always like this. I just remembered in middle school, my science project was all about solar panels. I wrote a letter to the president about the ozone layer. Like, I don't know where it came from. It just in me. I just thought, we live in this beautiful place and I'm learning about pollution. I'm a kid. We got to do something about this. I just always felt somehow responsible to do something. And living in this beautiful space in San Francisco, we grew food in the garden. It was a beautiful space to spend time in. We composted the local restaurants, food scraps. It really it started to infuse into me. This just makes sense. And then when I then moved to Florida, where I live now, and I bought a house, I said, where's my compost? The city doesn't provide it. I don't make enough food scraps myself. I love doing things with community. So I just asked my friends and neighbors, hey, do you want to bring me your food scraps? I'll compost it and I'll use it in the garden to grow more food. And it just took off. And then not too long after that, I went to get my permaculture design certification from Grow Permaculture in Brooksville. My teacher's Corrine Brennan, and had a wonderful time, met wonderful people that I then collaborated with in other community projects. And there's something within me, within my heart, that just says, let's take care of this beautiful place that takes care of us and take care of the people that are also around us. So I've just been very motivated to follow that impulse. And it's led me to amazing people, amazing experiences. And I feel by using these principles, I'm living a better life. I apply the first principle is observe and interact. Obviously in Lifebook, we're doing that all the time. I went from observing and interacting with my garden. Okay, what does this plant need? How is the light hitting this area? Should I change something so that these elements work together better? To then do it in my life and say, okay, these are how these categories are interacting. Can I create a strategy that will then impact more categories than just one or two? So there's really a force multiplying effect when you take some of these principles and you apply them to your life. And that's what I hope to bring people is, let's think like nature to improve our lives and then help to support our natural environment. And it's this beautiful closed loop system.
Nice. I love that. I think that's one reason why we connect as much as we do. My house is facing solar south specifically so they could put solar panels on. So as well as using geothermal heat up here in New England is so much less expensive than using oil or gas or electric. I really appreciate how much work you've done around that, because I do believe that the sustainability is going to be key for us to continue living on this planet for sure. So you touched on a little bit how you applied some of those principles into your life book of permaculture and regenerative living. Is there anywhere else that it's really applied into how you structured it or how you've built it out, or the frameworks you use or the goals you set or your habits?
I like to what we call stack functions. In permaculture, it's a term of how do you get many yields out of one thing? And so I just looked at my life and I said, all right, so what one thing can I do that will positively impact many other things so I don't have to do as much to get the results that I need? So I thought, okay, I need to get back to my martial arts training. I've been not training for a year and a half and losing a lot of all those abilities that you have to work to maintain to be safe. And so I came up with a strategy to get me back into shape so I could show up to class, because training, it meets a need for social, it meets a need for health and fitness. My mood is amazing when I'm training and playing capoeira with my friends. And career, it's I get to connect with other people and meet other people and network. So I like to think, how do we make things easier on us by thinking more about the design of our lives?
Got it. I like how that applies. Absolutely. And I can certainly see how that would allow multiple categories to rise. I know one of the biggest phrases that's used in the Lifebook community is that a win somewhere is a win everywhere. And if you can then combine multiple things, as much as we split out our life into these multiple categories, in some ways they're arbitrary lines of what our whole life is. So I can see how much you've been impacted by going through that as a student. So why did you then decide to take it to the next level and become more of a teacher and a facilitator on this?
I couldn't keep quiet about it, frankly. So if I find something that works, I am super passionate about it and I want to see other people benefit from it. Yoga teacher training, I helped others in that sense. With permaculture, I shared what I knew and my resources and brought people together in that way. I was getting such good results. I felt guilty not trying to help other people in the way that I was helping myself. So started with friends and family, just, couldn't stop talking about it, was trying to get them to go through the program. And then there was the opportunity to get certification. And so this is perfect because this is the structure and this is the official way to bring it to the world. And I'm thrilled to be able to do that.
Got it. Yeah, I was much the same way. I've been talking about this for a year and a half. Can I officially talk about it? How do I do this? But I also want to bring us back to the beginning, as I know that it was a struggle to get through it the first time. Now, that was a huge part for me too, was having someone to help keep us accountable to go through it has such a major impact on completing things, depending on what your accountability level is, if it's internal, external, or other factors. So if you were to be working with a new student, who would that ideal person be? Who would you want to bring a life book to?
Yeah, right. So I like to think about the people that are giving of themselves, that are trying to help others, that are working to help the environment. People that are giving tend to forget about themselves. And I have been that person several times in my life in my attempt to contribute to my community and the planet. And I've experienced burnout, and my light went out. I had no more to give. My cup was empty. And I learned you can't pour from an empty cup. Nothing comes out and it hurts. And I think that there are a lot of people out there, not just people that work in terms of helping others, helping the planet, but I think burnout is a really big issue. And what I hope to do is to show people that you'll actually be able to make a higher contribution if you first pause and reflect and say, okay, what do I really want for myself? Not what society dictates for me or what I've been conditioned to believe that I want, but what's going to really make me happy, feel fulfilled, fill my cup so then I can give from the overflow. And then with that design, I help people come up with strategies they can measure and execute so that they'll never forget about themselves, that it's built into their schedule, that nothing else happens until they've done their workout, until they've eaten their salad, whatever it is for them that is going to fill their cup so they can continue. And that's something I'm really passionate about because, frankly, we need people in this world that are giving of themselves and want to help others. It's what community is about. It's about mutual aid. It's about inner resilience and external resilience. It's how we're going to be able to transition through some of these challenging periods. We have to have a strong base. So I'm hoping to continue to help others in that sense.
Absolutely. As you were talking about that, it reminded me of Carolyn Mice actually does a program around healing the healers, working with nurses and first responders, because they put themselves out on the line and they're always giving. And in doing so, they then take a hit themselves. So I very much appreciate catching people before the burnout. And as we talked a few weeks ago, we were talking about the overall structure is those first 5 categories of Lifebook is about self first. Because if you don't take care of that self structure, that personal development, it's really difficult, as you said, to pour from a cup that's empty. So if somebody wants to reach out to you and work with you as a Lifebook leader to have you facilitate them through this, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's my name. It's jenandreani.com. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and it's in both places. It's Flourish with Jen Andreani. And there's some underscores on the Instagram one, but.
And we'll make sure that we add that into the show notes here too, so they can get a hold of you, and we'll get that out for people. So is there anything else that you would like the community to know about your process here in the Lifebook community, as well as being a Lifebook leader, or in general for the sustainability work that you're doing?
Yeah, so this year I'm going to be focusing on creating content and hopefully a course about applying the concepts and principles of permaculture to our personal lives. So I'm going to be guiding people through that journey in a course that I'm building, but also with the clients that I work with, whether it's someone that's going through the Lifebook process with me, I will coach them through, okay, how can we make this category of your life resilient? How can we make it regenerative? How can we make it so that it is as easy as possible and connects to other categories? So I apply what I've learned from permaculture to our inner world to build that inner resilience. So in a way, I'm an inner resilience coach. And so I can work in a coaching relationship as well. with someone if they don't have time for the course necessarily, but I do have this issue. And I can say, okay, I've done the work. I know the process and the framework. Let me work with you in this one piece, and we can work on it on a project space as well.
Very nice. So I know that you had mentioned earlier that your highest category was spirit. So how you scored the highest there. Are you a Harry Potter fan?
Yes.
So if you were to pick one of the categories as your house at Hogwarts, what category would that be?
Is that right?
Well, Hufflepuff would be the house in Hogwarts, but if you were to choose a lifebook category, what would be your house?
So right now, my highest category is character. And I think the second highest is spiritual. Yeah. I've been working on character. That's been a really solid, sacred choice for me. So.
Got it. But if you were the Harry Potter of this, where you could choose any house to be in, and you get to choose the one that is your house that you get to grow and flourish and show off and shine in, what would that be?
I think that's a trick answer there, because I think all the categories are endeavoring to raise our quality of life. And I think when your quality of life category is the highest, you've nailed all the other categories.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things we went through this as an exercise with our accountability group is what is your sphere of genius, if you will, that space where you flow, where you resonate with. But that Lifebook assessment, I think, is a good way for us to determine how satisfied are we with our life. Is the level of satisfaction that may not necessarily, like when we talk about the Clifton strengths, that you may have the talent in that area, but do you have the passion for it as well? I know that right now the Lifebook community doesn't have assessment inside of that structure. We're currently using the Mindvalley assessment, which is at life.mindvalley.com, I believe. We'll also link to that in the show notes here as well. But it's not an assessment in what is your strengths, what is your personality, like the VIA character traits. It's more how satisfied are you with where you're at in your life. And that's going to go up and down over time. So being that you had that jump from 60 to 125, you said that was more based on appreciation. Is there one key thing that you think, one key area of the categories that really had the biggest boost? Do you remember?
Yeah, so the jump wasn't just appreciation. I did a lot. I executed really hard on those strategies. And I think the one that I made the biggest effort on initially was, other than life vision, the fact that I was working on my life book, health and fitness. I got really solid on that. That was where I had to make the most movement, I think. And that really brought up a lot of the other categories. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you for going through this journey with us. I really appreciate you sharing your insight. And if anyone out there resonates with the way that Jen approaches this, each one of the Lifebook leaders in this community has a different approach. They have different tools. They have a different style of doing it. And I resonate with how Jen does it. I've got a different way that I do it. And it really is about having someone there to help guide and coach you through that process so that you can successfully complete it and then start taking the actions to create it. Really touches on those tangible results that you can see, especially when Jen earlier was talking about her OKRs, her objectives and key results, and your KPIs, your key performance indicators. And this really is a project management tool for your life, because our life is the biggest project we have to manage. So thank you again, Jen, for your time. It's fantastic having you here. Any last words for our audience?
No, thanks, Michael, for having me. And I really hope that folks that are listening will just take a look at the Lifebook process and see if it's a fit.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone out there in our community. If you enjoyed Jen, please click on her link down below, take a look at her website, and consider working with her through the Lifebook Premium process. If you enjoyed us having some of these interviews like this with other people who are doing amazing things in our life, please let us know. If it's a comment here, you can reach out to us personally as well. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe. Please engage with us. It helps us know that we're on the right track or we're not. And we're open to that feedback. So thank you very much. And we will see you next week.